Hello, my name's Olivia.
And my name's Addie.
And we had Miss Whittlesey's Spanish 2 class this term. So some of the things we learned are how to say our name. So how to say my name is Me llamo Olivia.
And how to say mine is Me llamo Addie.
And we also learned how to say our age. So tiene 16 años.
And tengo 15 años.
Oh yeah, tango. Anyways, we also learned how to say where we're from. So soy de Colfax.
And soy de what? Soy de Corona, California.
And we also learned how to say how we are as a person. So soy divertida, cómica y amable.
And soy divertida y agradable.
We also learned how to say what classes we have. So tiene la clase de español, inglés y yoga.
And I have the same classes as her, so tango y yoga, español y inglés.
Tango! Gosh. And we also learned how to say what we like. So me gusta hablar con mis amigos.
And yo estoy hablando con mis amigos.
The next thing we learned is how to use present progressive. So for the yo form, I can say yo estoy cantando, which means I am singing.
And for me, I can say yo estoy haciendo mi tarea, which means I am doing my homework.
We also learned how to use direct object pronouns, which is a way of saying, instead of saying the actual object, you say like they are. So I could say yo lo veo, which means I see that. And I can be talking about the book. So that means I see that, like I see the book.
Mm-hmm. Another word you could say is yo los veo, which means you see that.
You see them, yeah, you see that.
Like, for example, you can say like yo veo los perros, which means I see the dogs. Yo los perros, which means I see the dogs.
Yo los veo, which means I see the friends. Well, if you were to use amigo.
I was using pero on my...
Yo los veo.
Which means I see the dogs.
Yeah. Okay. The next thing we learned are the two verbs saber and conocer. And saber is a way of saying what you know, and conocer is a way of saying who you know. So for example, I can say, conozco la mamá de mi amigo. I know Addie's mom.
And for another example is you could say, sabo hacer snow... Because you already used conozco. I'm just going to use a different one.
Okay. Sorry.
And for what else you could say is sabo hacer... And another example you could say is sabo hacer snowboard, which means I know how to snowboard.
Yes. Another thing we learned is how to use preterite, which means like I can say anoche me acosté, which means last night I went to sleep.
And for what I can say is ayer tuve un partido de softball, which means I had a softball game yesterday.
And so that's a way of saying like past tense.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing we learned is how to say what we're wearing. So if I wanted to say for spring, I can say en la primavera llevo un blusa, los pantalones y sandalias. Sandalias. La clima es sol y perfecto, which means that I'm wearing a blouse, pants, and sandals, and the weather is sunny and perfect.
And another one you could say is like, en verano llevo una camiseta de tirantes, pantalones cortos y sandalias, which means that I am wearing shorts, sandals, and a tank top.
Yes.
And you could say like, en verano hace mucho calor, which means in the summer it is very hot.
Yes. And another thing we learned is reflexive verbs, putting a verb to the person that's using them. So, for example, I can say, en la mañana me levantarse, me vestirse y me ducharse, which means in the morning I get up, I get dressed, and I shower. And using those are just a way of putting the verbs to the subject.
Yeah. And like another example is that you could say, por la noche me pongo el pijama, luego me cepillo los dientes y me lavo la cara, which means like I'm putting on my pajamas and like I'm gonna brush my teeth and wash my face. And then después de eso me acuesto en la cama y me voy a dormir, which means I'm gonna go lay in my bed.
Yes. And another thing we learned how to do is to talk about the future and future tense. So I could say, to talk about this summer, I could say, este verano voy a tomar el sol, which means this summer I'm going to take in the sun, like sunbathe.
And like another one is that este verano voy a la nadar en mi piscina, which means I'm gonna go swimming in my pool.
Yeah, and that is pretty much a summary of most of the stuff we learned in Spanish too.
Yeah.
It's been pretty fun.
Yeah,
pretty
it has.
exciting
I feel like
journey.
I've learned a lot
Yeah.
this semester in Spanish too, and I'm excited to go move on to Spanish 3 next.
Excited to learn more. And I feel like
Yes.
we've learned quite a bit that I didn't know
Yes.
before. So yeah, that's a little summary.